I was paying for a cake at the grocery store when the cashier, a man in his 60s, suddenly grabbed my arm. His stare was so intense it made me uneasy. He leaned close and whispered something that shook me to the core, something about my son and his wife's family. If you're listening, make sure to follow along and tell me where you're from. For a moment I froze, unable to believe what I'd just heard. Then, as if nothing had happened, he let go and kept scanning items. I clutched the receipt with trembling fingers, my mind spinning. I slipped out through the back entrance, desperate for air. My heart pounded so loud it felt like it filled my ears. Could what that stranger told me actually be true? Or had I misunderstood? Unsure, I hid behind the dumpsters near the parking lot, where I could watch without being seen. If his words were real, I'd soon find out. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 67, and I've spent my whole life working hard to keep my family together. These days I live alone in a tiny downtown apartment, surviving on a pension that barely covers rent and medicine. Every month I count every dollar twice before deciding what to spend, always putting others first. My only son, Daniel, married Emily 3 years ago. At first she seemed distant, but I told myself she was just shy. Over time though, I noticed odd things about her, yet I kept quiet, not wanting to cause trouble in Daniel's marriage. Emily's family was always polite, especially her father, Robert. Still, something in their eyes never sat right with me. They often complained about money troubles, and whenever I could, I helped. From my hiding spot, I saw the grocery's main doors. Daniel was waiting in the car, but I stayed focused on the entrance, the cashier's words echoing in my mind. Within minutes, Robert walked out carrying heavy shopping bags. But they weren't from the grocery, they were sleek black bags with gold lettering from a luxury store I'd only admired through the windows. My pulse quickened. Robert walked to a shiny brand new car, not the beat-up one they always claimed barely ran. Its paint gleamed, the tires looked untouched. He carefully placed the bags in the trunk, then took out his phone. Though I couldn't hear him, his easy posture was nothing like someone drowning in debt. Memories rushed back of all the times Emily had begged Daniel for money. Rent due, medical bills, no food for the week. And my kind-hearted son always sent what he could. But what I was seeing didn't match their stories at all. The expensive bags, the new car, Robert's calm demeanor, it all felt like a cruel lie. A cold shiver ran through me. The cashier's warning suddenly made sense, though I didn't want to accept it. Could Emily's family really have deceived us all this time? Robert ended his call and scanned the lot, his eyes sharp, as if checking he hadn't been caught. That look told me everything. I needed to stay hidden longer. My instincts whispered there was more to uncover, and I had to be sure before telling Daniel. Sitting there, I thought back to my morning. I had woken up nervous but hopeful. It had been months since I'd visited Emily's family, and I wanted to bring something nice. I pulled out the jar of savings in my kitchen, counting every crumpled bill and coin I'd scraped together by giving up small treats. I had just $43. I set aside $20 to buy a cake, keeping the rest for medicine and food. I bathed carefully, put on my best simple dress, fixed my hair to hide the gray, and clipped on my mother's old pearl earrings. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who had worked all her life, raised a son alone after losing her husband, and was still fighting to hold her family together. Daniel arrived right on time, as always. He seemed tense, but I brushed it off as nerves. On the drive, he talked about work but avoided mentioning Emily or her family, which struck me as unusual. Near their neighborhood, I asked him to stop at the grocery store so I could pick up a fresh cake. He offered to join me, but I told him I'd be fine on my own. At the bakery counter, I chose a plain vanilla cake, simple, but good enough. The cake cost me exactly $18, $2 less than I'd planned. That small saving made me smile, since it meant I could also buy a greeting card. But it was right there, in the checkout line, that everything changed. The cashier, a man about my age, treated me normally until he noticed the name on my first credit card, the one that, as expected, was declined. When I handed over cash, he suddenly studied me more closely, whispered my name, Margaret Collins, and asked if I was Daniel's mother. The moment I said yes, his whole face shifted, he looked worried, even frightened. What he said next will stay with me forever, though at that moment I refused to believe it. He claimed my daughter-in-law's family came to that store often, dropping hundreds on imported goods and premium meats, while still asking my son for help. He knew because Robert, almost boasting, had mentioned how Daniel supported them every month. The cashier had even seen Robert buy bottles of wine that cost more than I spend on groceries for a week. He said Emily regularly purchased expensive beauty products and designer clothes, always paying in cash. He told me it seemed wrong, that a family living with such luxuries was taking advantage of a hard-working man and his aging mother. He said he spoke up because he'd watched me count coins for a simple cake, and it reminded him of his own mother, who had gone through something similar. He regretted not warning her in time. I walked out of that store stunned, my thoughts tangled. For years I had trusted Emily and her family, even sent what little I could to help. And Daniel, with his generous heart, had worked himself thin to support them. But now the cashier's words echoed in my chest, planting a sharp seed of doubt I couldn't ignore. That's why I hid. I had to see the truth for myself, because rumors weren't enough to risk destroying trust. From behind the dumpsters, I had a clear view of the lot, even if the stench was awful. And then it happened. Robert emerged with glossy black bags from a luxury store I'd only ever admired from afar. One purchase there could wipe out a month of my food budget. He carried himself like a man without a worry in the world. His clothes looked new, his shoes polished, and even from a distance I could tell his watch was expensive. Nothing about him spoke of the desperation they always described. The car waiting for him was brand new, its paint sparkling under the sun, its tires untouched. I knew a vehicle like that cost more than I'd ever had in my life. How could someone driving such a car possibly need my son's money? As he chatted on the phone, his voice light and carefree, I realized, this was not a man weighed down by financial trouble. Robert's relaxed body language was that of a man fully at ease with his life. Suddenly, all the small inconsistencies I'd noticed over the past few months began to click into place. Emily's casual mentions of fancy restaurants she claimed were just treats from friends. Her stories of new clothes supposedly bought on deep discounts. The social media photos of a lifestyle that didn't match the constant requests for help. Robert ended his phone call and strolled back toward the grocery entrance, moving confidently, with no trace of hurry. It gave me time to really study him. His shirt had the crisp cut of a designer brand, his pants were neatly pressed, and his leather shoes gleamed with quality. As I stayed hidden, I suddenly heard voices nearby. Two older women were chatting as they pushed their carts. I ignored them at first, until I heard Emily's name. "Did you see that new dress Emily wore at the mall yesterday?" said one, a gray-haired woman about my age. "Had to cost at least $200. I saw the same one in that pricey boutique upstairs." The other, a thin woman with glasses, nodded knowingly. "And not just dresses. My granddaughter works at that French beauty store. She says Emily is in there all the time, buying expensive products like money grows on trees." My chest tightened. These women were describing the same Emily who had called Daniel just last week, asking for help to cover Robert's medicine. The first woman, who they called Helen, went on, "What shocks me is how she keeps buying, yet tells everyone they're struggling. My friend at the bank says their deposits don't match the story at all." "Oh, maybe that's gossip," the other replied, though her tone suggested doubt. "But still, it is odd. They live in that big house, and somehow afford deliveries from the most expensive grocery store every week. Most of us couldn't buy that much in months." As they walked away, I caught more fragments, mentions of parties Emily's family had hosted, full of rich food, imported wines, and lavish decorations. Each word hit me like a blade. For months, I'd pitied that family, urged my son to help them, even sent my own meager savings when I could. I remember the day Emily called me directly, crying over the phone, begging for urgent help to pay Robert's medical bills. Emily once told me they had to choose between medicine or food, that they simply didn't know what to do. I remember lying awake that night, tormented by their suffering. The next morning, I withdrew $150 from my emergency savings, money I'd been holding back for my own health needs, and gave it to her. I couldn't bear the thought of them going without. But now, after hearing those women speak of the family's luxury, I felt like the biggest fool. How could I have been so blind, when the whole neighborhood seemed to see what I didn't? Robert soon came out again, this time with a smaller bag. On his way back, he stopped to chat with a man cleaning cars nearby. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. The man respected Robert, treating him like someone of status. Then Robert slipped him what looked like several bills, as if handing out money was nothing. If they were truly desperate, how could he afford to give so freely? Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Mom, what's taking so long? My heart dropped. I had forgotten he was still waiting in the car. I quickly typed back a lie about long lines. It stung to deceive my own son, but I needed time to think. Meanwhile, Robert finished his conversation, got into his car, and drove off with the calm assurance of a man who wanted for nothing. The smooth growl of the engine confirmed it was a top-quality vehicle, not the beat-up wreck they always complained about. I stepped out from behind the dumpsters and forced myself to walk calmly back to Daniel. My mind, though, was racing, sorting through every odd little detail I'd ignored in recent months. When I slid into the passenger seat, Daniel looked worried. Mom, are you okay? You look pale. Did it take that long to check out? Just the line, son, I answered, steadying my voice. Weekend crowds, you know. But inside, my heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. As he pulled away toward Emily's family's house, I tried to keep up a normal conversation. Yet every block brought me closer to a meeting that now felt entirely different. How's Robert's job these days? I asked casually. Last I heard from Emily, things sounded rough. Daniel sighed. Yeah, Mom. Emily says her dad had to cut back hours, his company's having problems. That's why we've been helping them more these past months, Daniel explained. But what I had just seen didn't match his words. A man struggling with reduced hours wouldn't be shopping at luxury stores or handing out cash in a parking lot. And how do you feel about it, son? I asked gently, watching his reflection in the rearview mirror. I know you've been working long extra hours. He sighed. Well, Mom, they're my family now. Emily is my wife, and when you marry into the family. If they need help, it's my duty. His response broke my heart. My hard-working boy was sacrificing his own well-being for people who, from what I'd uncovered, were using him. How long could this continue before it damaged his own future? We soon reached Emily's neighborhood, a tidy area with green lawns and neat homes. Not the wealthiest part of the city, but certainly not where a family in desperate poverty would live. As Daniel parked, I studied their two-story house. The lawn was landscaped, the facade freshly painted, the windows hung with new curtains. Even the front door looked recently redone. The place looks well kept, I remarked casually. Didn't you say they were struggling to pay for repairs? Oh yeah, Daniel said as he pulled in. Robert's been working extra weekends to handle the urgent fixes. He's trying hard to keep it up. Another story that didn't add up. If Robert truly worked overtime just to cover repairs, how did he have time, or money, to shop for luxury goods? We stepped out of the car. Daniel carried his things, and I clutched my cake along with a swirl of nerves and curiosity. Before we even rang the bell, the door swung open. Emily stood there with a radiant smile. The sight of her nearly stunned me. Since I'd last seen her just a month ago, her appearance had completely transformed. She wore a dress that was clearly expensive, fine fabric, a flawless cut, bold colors that made her look elegant. Her shoes shone like they had just come from the store, and her handbag matched perfectly. But what struck me most was her hair and makeup. Her hair had fresh highlights from a professional salon, and her makeup was flawless, the kind that required pricey products and a skilled hand. Margaret, what a joy to see you, Emily said warmly, pulling me into a hug. Her perfume hit me instantly, one I recognized from a store window, its price tag as high as 2 months of my food budget. Hello, Emily, I replied, masking my shock. You look wonderful. That dress is beautiful. This old thing, she laughed, though the sound rang slightly false. I grabbed it on clearance months ago. You know, you can't pass up a good deal. Emily's explanation about her dress echoed what I'd heard from the women at the store. There was always some excuse. A clearance sale, a gift from friends, a second-hand bargain that looked new. How many lucky breaks could one family possibly have? Inside the house, more details clashed with their story of hardship. The living room had been redecorated since my last visit. A new leather sofa, a gleaming glass coffee table, tasteful decorations, and on the wall, a massive flat-screen TV, the kind that costs thousands. How could people claiming financial ruin afford a luxury like that? Dad, look who's here. Emily called toward the kitchen. Robert appeared, drying his hands with a towel. For an instant, something flickered in his eyes when he saw me, but he quickly smiled. Margaret, so good to see you, he said warmly. We hope you're hungry. Emily's made a wonderful meal. It was the same Robert I'd seen shopping earlier, now wearing an apron, as though he'd been cooking all day. I handed him the cake. I thought this might go well with lunch. What a lovely gesture, Emily exclaimed. But it wasn't necessary. You know you're always welcome. From the doorway, I glimpsed their kitchen. The counters were crowded with rich ingredients, fine cuts of meat, fresh exotic vegetables, imported seasonings. Enough food to feed a family for days, all of it far beyond what I could usually afford. Did you prepare all this yourselves? I asked, truly astonished. We wanted to make your visit special, Robert explained easily. Besides, we found some great sales. More miraculous bargains. Either this family had an endless talent for discounts, or their stories were simply cover for something else. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. He chatted happily with Emily about work and his plans for the week, completely convinced by the version of reality they had built. But I couldn't ignore what I saw. Every detail of the house, every polished excuse, every glimpse of abundance pointed to the same conclusion. This family was not struggling at all. Over lunch, I tried to keep the conversation light while watching everything closely. The table was set with dishes and glasses I didn't remember, quality items, not what someone scraping by would own. The food was plentiful, varied, and far too expensive for people pleading poverty. Dinner was as lavish as the house. There were multiple main dishes, elaborate salads, and sides made with pricey ingredients. Robert poured wine into crystal glasses, and I recognized the label. Over $50 a bottle at the grocery store. This wine is delicious, I said lightly. Is it a special brand? Oh, this one. Robert grinned. A friend in imports got it for me at a discount. Normally, we couldn't afford wine like this, but when opportunities come along, you take them. Always a perfect explanation. Generous friends, miraculous bargains. How many coincidences could one family claim? Over the meal, Emily casually mentioned plans for a family celebration next month, complete with food, decorations, and entertainment. Sounds expensive, I blurted. She laughed. Oh, we've been saving for months. And Robert got an extra job to help cover it. I instantly thought back to him at the grocery store, spending freely, driving his new car. What kind of job? I pressed. For just a second, his mask slipped. Then he answered vaguely, weekend consulting. Nothing exciting, but it helps. His tone was so general it could mean anything, or nothing. As we talked, I noticed Emily's phone buzzing non-stop. Each time she checked it, her smile looked almost secretive. Once, when she thought no one was watching, she quickly typed a reply, her face lit with satisfaction. Everything okay with your phone? I asked casually. Oh, just friends planning a get-together, she replied, slipping it away. But the glow on her face told me there was more to it than social plans. After lunch, Robert offered a tour of the house. Every room showed recent upgrades, polished floors, fresh paint, new furniture. In the master bedroom, shopping bags from high-end stores sat on the dresser, some unopened, tags still dangling with eye-watering prices. Emily went shopping recently? I asked, gesturing toward them. Robert chuckled nervously. Clearance sales. Sometimes it's smart to buy ahead, even if you don't need it right away. That logic rang hollow. Families in true hardship don't stockpile luxury items, sale or not. Back in the living room, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Curious, I opened it, and my heart lurched. It was from the cashier at the grocery store. Somehow he had gotten my number and sent me a photo. The picture showed a receipt dated just 2 days earlier. The total was over $400. The items listed were premium wines, imported meats, seafood, fine cheeses, pure indulgence. The name on the receipt was crystal clear, Robert Williams. With the photo came a short message. Mrs. Collins, I'm sorry to disturb you, but you need to know. Your family deserves the truth. My pulse raced as I stared at the screen. The proof was right there. $400 on luxury groceries, bought 2 days ago by the same man who supposedly couldn't cover basics. I slipped my phone away before anyone caught my face, but my mind was already stitching the pieces together. We rejoined Daniel. And Emily, still chatting like nothing in the world was wrong. My son looked relaxed, happy, enjoying what he believed was warm family time, not a well-rehearsed show.
Mom, you okay?
Daniel asked, noticing my color.
You look a little pale. Just tired, I lied. Long outings wear me out.
Emily immediately offered tea, fussing over me with sweet concern that might have touched me, if I hadn't started to see her clearly. For the next hour I watched and listened, quietly tallying every mismatch and luxury with a tidy excuse attached. Emily's new clothes, Robert's car, the immaculate house, the lavish meal, the pricey wine, the shopping bags, and now the receipt. What stung most was realizing this likely wasn't new. How many months, maybe years, had my son been sending money? How many sacrifices had I made for people who didn't truly need help? When we finally said our goodbyes, my decision was set. I couldn't let this continue. My son deserved the truth, however hard. It was my job to protect him from more manipulation. On the drive home, Daniel said what a lovely visit it had been, how healthy and cheerful Emily's family looked. His words cut deep, knowing I was about to pull the curtain back.
They do look well, I answered carefully.
Maybe a little too well for a family in serious trouble. That ride felt endless. Every mile took me farther from the house where I'd seen the truth, and closer to a choice that could change everything. My thoughts swirled, doubt, anger, a rising heat I had to hold down. Daniel drove easy, even whistling, certain we'd just strengthened family bonds. He had no idea his mother had been gathering proof of a long, careful con. At a red light he said, "Mom, I'm so glad you get along with Emily's family. I know you had doubts at first, but you can see they're good people." My heart cracked. How do you tell your only child that the people he trusts might be expert liars? "Daniel," I began slowly, "have you ever noticed anything that doesn't add up in what Emily says about their finances?" He glanced over, then back to the road. "What do you mean, Mom? Doesn't add up how?"
"Well," I said, choosing each word with care.
"Today I noticed a lot of new things in their house," I said carefully. "The television, furniture, Emily's clothes, all of that must cost money." Daniel sighed, and I could tell my words touched a nerve. "Mom, I told you, Robert's been picking up extra jobs. And Emily's great at finding bargains. Not everything new is expensive." "But don't you think it's odd," I pressed gently, "that a family who needs constant help for basics can still afford so many luxuries?" "They're not luxuries, Mom," he answered, his tone defensive. "They're needs, covered with hard work and sacrifice." The TV was second-hand. The furniture was a one-time deal. Emily's clothes are clearance finds. Every justification was identical to the ones I'd heard at lunch, as if rehearsed to perfection. So I tried another angle. "Son, have you ever seen receipts or gone with Emily when she finds these incredible bargains?" His hands tightened slightly on the wheel.
"Why all the questions?
"She's my wife. If she says it's on sale, I believe her.
Marriage is trust."
That answer confirmed my fear. Daniel had never seen proof.
He believed blindly because he trusted.
"Of course, son," I said softly. "Trust matters. But it's also wise to protect yourself from people who might misuse it." His head turned sharply. "Are you saying Emily and her family are lying to me?"
"Mom, that's serious."
"I'm not accusing anyone," I backtracked quickly. "Just sharing concerns, as a mother who wants you happy and secure." The rest of the ride passed in tense silence. I could see him thinking, but his expression showed more resistance than reflection. Any criticism of Emily's family felt to him like a personal attack. When we reached my apartment, he helped me out, but his hug was cooler than usual. "Mom," he said before leaving, "I hope you'll give Emily's family a chance. They're good people doing their best in tough times."
"I'll keep that in mind, son," I replied.
He took it as a promise to be more understanding, when in truth, I felt the opposite. That night, alone in my tiny apartment, I sat with a cup of tea and tried to untangle my racing thoughts. I had plenty of circumstantial evidence, neighbors' gossip, my own observations, even a photo of that $400 receipt. But I also had a son who fully believed his wife's family were victims deserving compassion. And every time I tried to break through that belief, I hit a wall of resistance. I pulled out my phone and looked again at the receipt the cashier had sent me. The numbers didn't lie. Over $400 spent on luxury groceries just 2 days before our visit. That was more than I spent on food in a month. As I stared at the photo, memories rushed back, Daniel coming home drained after extra shifts to send money to Emily's family, and myself, scraping together my small savings to help when they claimed they had nothing. The indignation I'd held back all day finally began to surge. It wasn't only the money, it was the manipulation. The way they preyed on my son's kindness, weaving lies to maintain their lifestyle while we made sacrifices. And what stung most was the thought that they might have laughed behind our backs, seeing us as gullible and easy to use. But what tortured me most was the question, what now? I had observations, testimonies, even photos. Yet Daniel would never accept anything negative about his wife's family without ironclad proof. If I pushed too soon, I risked alienating him and driving him deeper into their hands. If I waited, the exploitation would go on, perhaps worse than ever. That night, I made a choice. I wouldn't confront Daniel until I had evidence so strong it couldn't be denied or explained away with talk of clearance sales or extra jobs. I would quietly investigate, gathering proof that forced the truth into the light. The following days were some of the hardest I'd lived in years. Every conversation with my son required careful self-control, pretending all was normal while the weight of what I knew pressed on me. During that week, the cashier messaged me 3 more times, each with more proof. Photos of receipts in Robert's and Emily's names showed extravagant purchases, unnecessary luxuries, imported goods. One receipt totaled over $600, including French champagne at more than $100 per bottle, fine seafood, gourmet cheeses.
The date?
The very day Emily had called Daniel in tears, begging for rent money. Then Helen, the woman I'd overheard at the grocery store, reached out through a mutual friend. She told me their family had been throwing lavish parties with professional catering and costly decorations. She even described Robert's birthday, an event guests whispered had cost thousands in food, drink, and entertainment. Margaret, Helen told me over the phone, my daughter lives on their block. She says delivery trucks bring expensive clothes, appliances, even furniture all the time. That's not normal for a family in crisis. Every new detail made silence harder to keep, but I knew timing mattered. I needed the right moment, one Daniel couldn't easily dismiss. That moment came on a Wednesday night when he stopped by after work. He looked worn out, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. When I asked what was wrong, he sighed and said Emily had asked for more money, this time for a medical emergency. Dad needs a minor surgery, Daniel explained, rubbing his temples. Insurance won't cover everything. They need $200 by Friday. I've been working double shifts to scrape it together.
That was the breaking point.
$200 for a so-called emergency, demanded by the same family who had just spent $600 on champagne and seafood.
I couldn't let him sacrifice any longer. Daniel, I said, taking his hands. I need to show you something.
I'm doing this because I love you, and I can't watch you get hurt. I pulled out my phone and showed him the first photo of the $400 receipt. His eyes widened at the date and total. Before he could speak, I swiped through the others, the $600 splurge, the champagne, the seafood. Mom, where did you get this? His voice was tight, a mix of confusion and denial.
How do you even know they're real? I told him about the cashier, the neighbors' conversations, everything I'd observed at the house.
Slowly, carefully, I laid it all out, step by step. There has to be an explanation, he insisted weakly.
Maybe Robert had a good month.
Or maybe they got money from somewhere else. Son, I said softly, those purchases happened on the very same days Emily called you, begging for help with basics.
Don't you see the pattern? That's too much coincidence.
I showed him the notes about the lavish parties. The neighbors have seen how they live. This isn't poverty, it's a performance. Daniel stood and paced my small living room, his mind clearly racing through old conversations, broken promises, details he had ignored for years.
Finally he whispered, his voice broken. But why? Why would Emily lie to me about something so important? Because it worked, I answered quietly. Because you believed her.
You sent money faithfully, without asking questions. To them, you've been a dependable source of income, one they used to fund a lifestyle they couldn't otherwise afford.
Tears welled in his eyes.
Watching his pain shattered me inside, but I knew it was the only way to free him from their manipulation.
How much have I given them?
Daniel finally asked, his voice tight with dread. From what you've told me these past months, I answered carefully, probably more than $5,000.
And that's not counting what I've given them myself. The number hit him like a blow.
5,000 meant months of overtime, sacrifices, missed opportunities. Money funneled to people who had been deceiving him all along.
I need to talk to Emily, he said at last, his voice carrying a firmness I hadn't heard in ages. I need to confront her with this.
Are you sure you're ready? I asked softly. Once you put this on the table, nothing will be the same. No matter how she answers, your relationship will change. He sat in silence, staring at the photos on my phone, weighing not just the financial evidence but the betrayal it revealed. Finally he looked at me and said, "Mom, thank you. I know it wasn't easy to tell me this, but I needed the truth." I hugged him tightly, torn between relief and fear for what was coming. The truth was out, but the consequences were just beginning. That night he left my apartment with a resolve I hadn't seen in months. I couldn't sleep, imagining what would unfold. Then, at 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice held pain, anger, and a strange kind of relief.
"Mom," he said flatly, "you were right about everything."
"What happened, son?"
I asked, though I already feared the answer.
When I got home, I searched through her things. I'd never done that before because I trusted her. What I found left me stunned. Bags from expensive stores hidden in the closet, receipts for hundreds in clothes and accessories. Jewelry still in boxes with the price tags attached. My stomach dropped.
But he wasn't finished.
The worst part was in her purse, a notebook. She wrote down every dollar she's asked me for these past 2 years. Every lie, every fake emergency, every invented story.
Documented like it was her job.
The words crushed me. This wasn't just lying, it was planned exploitation, methodical as a business.
And what else was in the notebook? I asked, though I dreaded his reply. Plans, Daniel said bitterly.
The next one was a dental emergency for her mom. $1,800. She even wrote notes on how to guilt me if I questioned her. The cold calculation of it made me sick. It wasn't misunderstanding, it was deliberate, systematic manipulation.
And when you confronted her? I asked.
At first, she denied everything, he said. Claimed the purchases were gifts, that the notebook was for household expenses, that I was twisting things. But when I showed her the photos you had of the grocery receipts, her whole story changed.
How did it change? I asked.
Daniel's voice was heavy.
She exploded.
She screamed that I had no right to go through her things, that your family never accepted her, and that it was your fault for putting ideas in my head. She called you a meddling mother-in-law trying to ruin our marriage. The accusations stung, but they didn't surprise me. That's what manipulators do. They twist the story and paint themselves as the victims. But what shocked me most, Daniel continued, was when she finally admitted the truth. She said her family had never been in crisis. Robert has a steady job. All of it, every emergency, every sob story, was a strategy to take advantage of me. Those were her exact words, Mom.
She said I was easy to convince, and that our family had money to spare, as if it was our duty to fund their lifestyle.
For over an hour he told me everything, each lie uncovered, each manipulation finally exposed. He had even called Robert during the fight, hoping to hear his side. At first Robert repeated the same old excuses, but once Daniel pressed him, he admitted it too.
And what did he say? I asked.
He said they picked me from the start because I was a good match, steady job, supportive family. He said it wasn't personal, just business.
The coldness of that answer chilled me.
To them, my son had never been a husband or a man with feelings, just a source of income.
And what did Emily say when her father confessed?
Daniel gave a bitter laugh. She wasn't upset about the lies or what they'd done to us. She was furious at him for ruining the plan, angry because his admission meant she couldn't keep using me. For the next hour, he shared more. Every medical emergency had been fake. Robert's work struggles were made up. Even the miracle sales were lies. They had simply bought whatever they wanted with his money. What hurts most, Mom, Daniel whispered, isn't just the money. It's realizing that for 2 years, I never really knew my wife.
Everything was an act to keep me paying.
And what are you going to do now, son?
I asked, though I already knew. I told her tonight our marriage is over.
There's no rebuilding trust after a betrayal like this.
Tomorrow, I'll start divorce proceedings.
Though I knew it was the right choice, my heart ached for him. No one deserves to discover that the person they love has been lying so completely. I also told her they'll never get another cent from me, or from you, Daniel added firmly. If they try, you tell them exactly what I think of their games.
Of course, son, I assured him. They'll never get another thing.
Mom, Daniel said before hanging up, his voice softer now, thank you for having the courage to show me the truth. I know it wasn't easy, especially knowing it would destroy my marriage. But you saved me from years of being used. After hanging up the phone, I sat in the dark of my apartment, trying to process everything. The truth was finally out, but it had come at a heavy price. Daniel's marriage was over, his trust had been shattered, and now he faced the painful task of rebuilding. Yet I also knew this truth had freed him from a situation that would have only grown worse. Emily and her family would never have stopped, they would have drained him dry. The months that followed were a slow process of healing. Daniel moved into a small apartment near work while sorting through the divorce.
I stood by him every step, offering
support as he pieced his life back together. The legal process uncovered even more. His lawyers found Emily had hidden assets all along, secret accounts, valuable items bought with his money, stashed away to keep up the illusion of need. Mom, Daniel said over dinner one evening, the lawyer calculated it. In just 2 years of marriage, I sent them more than $15,000. Money I could have used for a house, for my future, or to help you. The figure stunned me. $15,000, earned through long hours and sacrifice, stolen by people who had seen him only as a bank. Yet I couldn't help but feel proud of the strength my son was gaining through this trial. During the proceedings, Robert tried to contact me. He begged me to intercede, promising they'd return the money and never ask again.
But I'd learned too well. Robert, I told him firmly, you had 2 years to be honest. You chose lies and manipulation. Now live with the consequences.
Emily made her own attempt, showing up at my apartment in plain clothes, no makeup, tears she must have practiced. Margaret, she sobbed, I know we made mistakes, but I loved Daniel.
It got out of control. We never meant to hurt him. I kept my composure. Real love doesn't come with systematic lies.
What you did wasn't love, it was exploitation. She cycled through every role, repentant victim, desperate wife, remorseful daughter-in-law. But each mask only confirmed the truth. The money you took wasn't just money, I told her. It was Daniel's trust, his future, his faith in people. That can't be repaid with apologies. Finally, she dropped the act. Her face hardened. I always knew you were the problem. Without you, he would have been happy.
Maybe, I said calmly. But it would have been a happiness built on lies.
I'd rather see him hurt for a while, but free, than kept content while being used. After that, I never heard from Emily or her family again. Helen later told me they moved away, likely to escape the shame of being exposed. Daniel's recovery was steady. At first he blamed himself for being so trusting. But with time he realized his generosity wasn't a flaw, it had simply been exploited.
Mom, he told me over dinner near his new place, I've been thinking. I've learned something important.
Generosity has to be paired with wisdom. And trust, it has to be earned, not given blindly. With the money no longer flowing to Emily's family, Daniel finally began rebuilding his own life. He opened a savings account, invested in his career, and for the first time in years allowed himself small luxuries without guilt. He even insisted on helping me, buying new appliances I needed and often showing up with good food so we could share a meal without worry.
It's ironic, he said one evening over dinner.
All that time I was breaking myself to help people who didn't need it, while you, who could have used more support, never asked for a thing.
His words pierced me.
For years I had stayed silent about my own needs so he wouldn't feel more pressure. 6 months after the divorce, Daniel had found balance again. He was cautious but not bitter, wiser but still capable of trust. During one of our Sunday walks, he thanked me again. Mom, I know it wasn't easy, but you had the courage to show me the truth. Son, I told him, a mother's job isn't only to love, it's to protect, even when it hurts. The grocery cashier, Eli, also became an unexpected friend. When he visited one afternoon, we spoke for hours about speaking up against injustice.
You know, Mrs. Collins, he said before leaving, my mother went through the same thing.
Nobody warned her, and by the time she found out, her savings were gone. That's why I told you. Some truths hurt, but silence hurts worse. Looking back, I feel both pain and pride. Pain for what Daniel suffered, pride for the strength he showed. I learned that true family love sometimes means telling the hardest truths, even when it shatters illusions. That day in the grocery store, when I chose to observe instead of ignore, changed our lives forever. 2 years have passed. Daniel is wiser, stronger, and finally free from manipulation. And I, Margaret Collins, at 69, have learned it's never too late to be brave and protect the ones you love. Daniel remarried 6 months ago. His new wife, Rachel, is hardworking and honest, and what I admire most is her respect for the bond one share with my son. She's never once shown interest in our finances. The first time she came to dinner, she brought ingredients for us to cook together. "Margaret," she told me gently, "I'll never ask you or Daniel for money. I believe in earning what I need." Her words moved me deeply, proof of how much I'd been scarred by Emily's deceit. The healing wasn't easy. Daniel went through periods of depression, questioning his judgment. Some nights he called asking, "Mom, how can I ever be sure? How do I know someone really loves me, and not just what I can give?" Those conversations broke my heart, but they also showed me his courage. He wasn't giving up, he was learning to trust again, this time with wisdom. In the first year after the divorce, Daniel created what he called his verification system. Before helping anyone financially, he required documentation, checked multiple sources, and took time to see if their story held up. At first, I feared he'd become too distrustful, but I soon realized he was simply learning to balance his generous heart with hard-earned wisdom. This new approach proved valuable when a coworker asked him for money for a supposed family emergency. Instead of sending cash right away, Daniel asked for medical papers and even called the hospital. The story was false. The man just wanted gambling money. "Mom," Daniel told me, shaking his head, 2 years ago, I'd have sent it without question. Now I know verification isn't mistrust, it's protection." As for me, I wrestled with guilt for months, wondering if I should have spoken up sooner. But in time I accepted that I had acted when I finally had enough proof to convince him. The grocery store cashier, Eli, became a true friend. He and his wife Marlene often visit us, and we share a bond built on honesty. "You know, Margaret," Eli told me once, "what I admire most is how you handled it. Many people would have screamed or sought revenge. You just showed the facts and let the truth speak." His words reminded me of a lesson I'll never forget. Silent dignity is more powerful than noisy revenge. I never tried to hurt Emily's family. I just stopped letting them hurt us. Helen, the neighbor who had given me more information, also became a close companion. "My son-in-law works in social services," she explained one afternoon, "and he says family scams like this are more common than people realize. Some people make a living out of exploiting generous relatives." Her words helped me see we hadn't been foolish, just targeted by professionals at emotional manipulation. The financial impact was painful but survivable. Counting my contributions and Daniel's unrepaid loans, we lost about $15,000. But once that outflow stopped, his finances improved quickly. Within a year, Daniel saved enough for a down payment on a modest house, something that once seemed impossible while he was trapped in their web. Daniel asked me to move in with him and Rachel, but I chose to keep my independence in my own apartment, though now with the better furniture and appliances he insisted on buying. "Mom," he said as he set up the new refrigerator, "for years I watched you count coins while I sent hundreds to people who didn't need them. Now it's your turn to have what you deserve." Rachel has proven to be not only a wonderful wife to Daniel, but also a caring daughter-in-law to me. She never competes for my place in his life and always includes me in their family plans. The contrast with Emily is so stark that sometimes I can't believe they exist in the same world. Just last month, Rachel shared that they're expecting their first child. The news filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. This baby will grow up in a home built on honesty and integrity, I thought, so different from the lies and manipulation that would have surrounded them if Daniel had stayed with Emily. Rachel held my hand and said, "I want our child to know you as the grandmother who had the courage to protect this family. Daniel's told me everything, and I deeply admire what you did. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't hidden behind those dumpsters to watch Robert. Would the lies have dragged on for years? Would Daniel ever have discovered the truth on his own? I'll never know. But I do know this. Protecting the people we love sometimes requires the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Over the past 2 years, I've reflected on the signs I ignored, the little inconsistencies, the too perfect explanations, the way Emily always had a story ready. My instincts had been warning me, but I silenced them, afraid of causing conflict. Now I understand. Keeping the peace should never come at the cost of letting your family be exploited. Sometimes the greatest act of love is creating conflict when it's the only way to protect someone. At 69, I feel stronger and wiser than I have in decades. Not just because I helped free my son from a destructive marriage, but because I proved to myself that it's never too late to be brave, to stand for what's right, and to defend the people you love. True strength doesn't come from avoiding problems, but from facing them with dignity. Some of the hardest choices turn out to be the most correct, even if their meaning becomes clear only with time. As I finish writing these reflections, I hear Daniel and Rachel laughing in the kitchen, preparing Sunday dinner. It's the sound of a family built on honesty and respect. That sound is worth more than every dollar we ever lost. Because in the end, the greatest wealth we have isn't money, it's the authentic relationships we protect. And no one can ever take that from us. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you feel like it, share your story in the comments.